let's say you have 500 followers. Focus on the first 50 that really rock with you. Triple down on them. Give them incentives of like, hey, here's early access to my music. Here's a private show. Make them feel like they're part of your growth.
What's going on, y'all? You are now listening to the Future Ancestors podcast. I am Jason Encite, and this is my co-host, Kat Serrano.
Hi.
Today, we have a special guest who's actually helping the music community in many ways and is now extending that to the Filipino community. Drew De Leon is a music executive who has worked on both sides of the industry, from major labels to independent ones. His focus on developing talent from the ground up instead of pumping out artists like a factory has proven with his startup, the Digilog, providing a hub for artists trying to break into the industry, as well as the potential decision makers who have the ear for finding and developing talent. From his work, Drew and his team were selected as one of Billboard's 2023 Indie Power Players, ain't no joke. They followed up in 2024 with the digital marketing agency Digilabs, partnering with clients like Atlantic Records and Virgin Records, amongst countless others. While having their third annual Digilog Days, a convention, so to speak, to provide knowledge, resources, and networking for those aspiring to work in music. It's not a shock this year Drew was appointed as the New York chapter advisor for the Recording Academy. And recently, he's taken his experience and know-how to spotlight Filipino artists globally with Fresh Goods, a playlist featuring over 100 Filipino musicians, to incorporate into a platform called The Fresh Project, launching in 2025. So let our guest do the rest with the details of his work, and welcome to the Future Ancestors podcast, Drew De Leon.
Wow, appreciate it. Thanks. I was just saying, I gotta hire you. Oh, for every entry point, man. Now you're my way.
I'm naturally a hype man, so okay. There you go. It's all my background too. Yes, so welcome. Yes.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here.
For sure.
So we noticed that every accolade you receive, you normally say, "I'm just a Filipino kid from Queens." Why is that your response?
Yeah, I think just humble upbringing. You know, I think every Filipino American has a different story, whether you're raised or when born in the Philippines or immigrated here, or, from the Philippines, or Filipino American. And I think the upbringing in Queens specifically, and specifically New York and just tri-state area, is very unique, especially East Coast compared to obviously like the West Coast. And I think growing up, my parents were obviously like hustlers. So my parents, my mom came through the embassy route, so she worked for the Filipino embassy, and my dad, worked, on the banking side. But I think it was challenging. I think just trying to figure it out, lay our roots. So I know where I started from, and whether living in various parts, whether it's Manhattan, now going back to Queens, I'm always appreciative of the Queens roots. It's I'm a casual Mets fan. Well, I'm a New York Knicks fan by trade, but I think the cultural diversity of Queens, the food. When I look at my block, I just see POCs across, and it just is representative of the way I look at the world. So that's why I'm very appreciative, growing up in Queens.
I love that. Where's your family from in the Philippines?
Yeah, so my family is from different areas. So Manila, Quezon City, this kind of area Tibitan, and then also in the province of Tarlac.
Oh, okay.
So I was born there. I lived there till I was 4, and then my mom was like, "We out of here." So it was funny because I think when I was first coming into the States, it was a culture shock. I lived in New York for a little bit, and then found myself going to preschool in Philly. Predominantly Jewish preschool, which was, I just didn't know where I was. But I was speaking Tagalog, and kids just didn't understand. But it's one of those things where it's I think a lot of people just coming from a different country have to assimilate fast.
Yeah. For sure.
And I think that's allowed me to open up to people and be friendly. And I think that's also just within the Filipino DNA, being able to just be friendly with people, and that's allowed me to kind of build a relationship with a lot of people over the years, especially in music and building community. So I appreciate those experiences, as challenging as they were, as like kind of like stepping stones to like build my character.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you just let it right, you know, you just set it up right there for me. What actually sparked your interest in music in the first place? And then how did that eventually lead to a career?
Yeah. So I gotta like really rewind a bit, because I think for just a lot of immigrant parents in general, like we're all kind of prescribed to just set a certain path, like education, you know? And I think going, you know, to school, it was obviously always harped on, just like, you got to go to college. You're the oldest, and you got to represent. And I did that. And I think going into Baruch College, shout out to Baruchka. I'm a Baruch alum. It's a city school, one of the best schools in the city. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted. You know, I think they focused on finance. I was always like a creative guy, like growing up. Like I would just like be in class daydreaming about like writing stories and you know, thinking about like creative stuff. And I think going into it, you know, I thought, you know, taking an accounting class would be like the route. And, you know, the first semester I was like I'm not the Asian that loves math, you know, and I found myself pivoting, and then I decided to go into marketing. But the reality is, it's like my parents wanted a paying job, so I found myself working in finance at an internship, and I was like, this is good money, you know, for like a 21-year-old, and you know, found myself getting that internship leading into a full-time gig. So my first job out of college was working at Morgan Stanley.
Oh wow.
So I was working like right by here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like 1585. I think that's the building, like down the block. But it was interesting because I came in as a trade analyst, you know, and I thought myself like I had somewhat made it. Yeah. So went into the city, and then you know, three months in, it's like, damn, this is like not what I want, you know, because like you look at people around you, you're like, your mom's happy, dad's happy, everyone's happy. You're like the talk of like the holiday party.
Yeah.
You know, you're like,
Because they're so proud.
Yeah, they're so proud. You're the guy. You're now living in the city, and I thought to myself that I at least made it, and deep inside I was like, man, this is not me. And it took me 2.5 years to really pull that trigger and make that decision to pivot.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I was just kind of just like really living a different life. I was just like, just go into Monday, just wing it, and just like, you know, show face. Not to say I did really great work, but this was at the heart of like, you know, the financial crisis and the recession. This is just for context. This is between 2007 2010.
Yeah.
So I was working like 80, 90 hours a week. Oof. And it was just like brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, you know, it ate up my soul. Wow. So when I told my family that I wanted to like take an extended vacation, because I needed time to figure it out.
Yeah.
There was like, you're crazy. Like, how are you gonna make money? I was like, I don't have a clear plan yet, but I just need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Excuse my French.
No, you're good.
Oh no, you're good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the pivot after that. You pivoted into music. So how'd you get into that?
Yeah, so I was grateful because like a lot of my friends were creatives, and I was always just like, you know, I was just like how do you do this and, you know, still create sustainable income? And either they're a photographer, you know, designers and so forth. I was really inspired by that. My friend at the time, who also worked in finance, was an aspiring DJ, and it was interesting timing because this is where like music and technology started to intersect, where, you know, I remember back in the day, you know, shout out to DJ Get Live. I used to like carry his like DJ crates to his parties. He's from Queens. And it was like the advent of like software like Serrano. Really? And it allowed anyone that loved music to learn how to DJ, because they didn't necessarily have to like learn how to like scratch. Yeah. So it just gave like a lower barrier of entry. And for him, like he learned through Serrano, and I started helping him and as a friend. And eventually that friendship became like a business relationship where like I started managing him. And no one gives you like a toolbox or a toolkit to manage, manage people. So, but you know, I just knew business 101. I was like, I can't come into like a venue and be like, you know, I'm Drew, I'm the manager. Like I had to come up with a company and represent him. Like, so, you know, I was one day just daydreaming, and I was like, blank label. I was like, it sounds Professional Sounds Music. And I started that as like the management company, and that was my entry point to music, managing DJs, artists, and just like immersing myself in that scene. So I was like booking gigs, like, and that's how I met a lot of great people. And then I found myself also working a full-time job at Beats by Dre. So that's how I know Jason, through mutual people like Chip. So Chip, who's a mutual friend of us, his brother PJ, he used to work with us at Beats by Dre. So I worked there during the day from 2011 to 2014, and then work on my management stuff because it didn't necessarily pay the bills, but I was helping like build my like reputation, like my attraction, and also like learning the music business as a whole.
I think we all have that commonality of like, yo, we stack dough. You have that to like to finance your dreams, you know? So, I mean, you did the right path. So it led you to where you are right now. So I don't like, I kind of see the vision of what you had going, because it went from like, hey, let me go finance, but oh, let me get toward music. And then it's like, it was one step by step, you know?
Yeah.
And good for you for listening to yourself and doing what you needed to do, following your heart, right? Because sometimes it could be scary. I mean, you were making all this money, you were young, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to really, that took a lot of courage to like stop and be like, you know what? I want to do something that makes me
For sure.
feel good.
I think culturally, I think there's like this kind of perception of like, there's like shame when you don't do what your parents want.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of break through that wall and really just like accept it, like, this is my life to live.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily going like just doing anything crazy. I just need to like find something that I was excited about.
Yeah.
And that takes time. And I think during that process when I was transitioning, and I just want to be transparent, like I was working odd jobs, like, you know, I was waiting tables, you know, and I was working as a referee at different like recreational volleyball games, very competitive volleyball games for people that played, you know, college volleyball. And then I would referee softball games, I would tutor, you know. It's just like, it also like kind of sparked a hustle mentality that I didn't necessarily, I knew was always in me, but didn't know how to like ignite.
Yeah. So that kind of brought it out for you.
It did.
Yeah.
And just kind of having my back against the wall, you know, I had to like humble myself, you know, had to like move from, you know, the city, move back home, and just like, cool, like, I get it. This is going to be a shift. My circle of friends have shifted. Like, you know, they're not the people that I thought they were. So it was like
a lot.
Yeah, it's just like reality. And I think it allows you to grow up fast, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a lot to take in all at once too, while you're in transition.
Yeah.
As someone who embraces Filipino heritage, how has your cultural background influenced your perspective on the music industry?
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm very mindful of my position, because there's not a lot of people that look like me in these rooms that make decisions. And when I find myself with people that are in these rooms, I align with them, because whether you're Filipino or API, like it's amazing to see, because we have very similar experiences in terms of like navigating the music space. You know, and I think that's been really cool. And shout out to a lot of great professionals like John Vincent, Salcedo, Marissa Pizarro. There's a lot of great creators. Byron, he's over in LA. He's, you know, head creative over there at Live Nation. Myra, you know, DaCosta, like she's over at Def Jam, with, like, you know, leading international marketing. So just a lot of just great, you know, Filipinos.
I love that.
In the space. And I think there's a lot of great organizations like, you know, the Asian American Collective, like Zena.
Yeah.
You know, she's been a great, like, you know, pioneer in driving like not only the Filipino voice, but the API voice in the space. So it's been really cool to see that. But I think now that we're in this position, because we've been able to help artists within the US, it's like figuring out how to like support not only professionals in our communities, but also artists in our communities in the US, but also ex-US, you know, as well, internationally, if we can, you know. And I think everyone's doing it in various ways, whether it's like supports through organizations like the AAC, or, you know, obviously platforms like the Digilog, which I'll talk about more.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because right now I feel like there's a lot of that. Like, you know, you have Emmeline and everything. I feel like everyone has worked hard to get to where we are. Now that we're all here. It's like we're trying to get people back home so that we can support them too, which I think is really beautiful. I think that's awesome. So what advice do you have for Filipino American creatives who want to make an impact in industries where representation is still growing?
I think one, you know, as you're building, so like for example, as an artist, I think you have to like really educate yourself and understand the music business as a whole. You know, the industry itself is shifting. You know, like back in the day, we had CDs. You know, there was less music out, so it was more curated. You know, radio was really prominent. Now there's a lower barrier of entry where like anyone is uploading music to streaming services, and like there's at least 100,000 songs uploaded each day. So as an artist, let's say you're from LA or you're from the West Coast. I think regionally, you want to build kind of like a niche, you know, community as you're putting your music out, because I think oftentimes you can have grandiose ideas to like expand, like, oh, I want to go global. I was like, well, you can't even, you know, fill in like a 50 cap room. Then it's like you want to get ahead of yourself. I think one is start building your community as you're like
As an artist. Yeah.
I think the other part too is, and this is not an overnight thing, is like what is your voice and mission as an artist? Like what is the story that you're trying to tell? Because the music that you're writing, whether it's like love music, whether it's impactful music, whether it's empowering music, whether it's sad music, there has to be a clear creative through line to connect with people.
Yeah.
And I think when I think of music is really the soundtrack of people's lives. Like we listen to music whether we're in the gym, you know, whether we're on a road trip, whatever it may be. It's just trying to find that pocket, you know, that really represents like a clear vision as to the music that you're trying to build, because essentially you're trying to create a world for yourself. Yeah. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to invite fans into this world. But that takes time. Yeah. You know, I think as a creative, you know, especially in the industry, is also figuring out different verticals that represent you as a brand. You know, it's like, all right, cool. Not only is my music fire, but like I got fire style, like I have a great kind of outlook on health. Like what other like extensions of you can like help you kind of like bring people in that are like beyond your like core fans and also like core followers. You know, I think that's important. And then on the education side, you know, just making sure like you protect yourself. You know, it's not like just like, hey, you know, I want to sign a record deal or I want to put my music out. Like, you know, understand the business. Like, you don't want to just hire a manager unless you're bringing revenue in. You know, I think it's important to ask questions, but also just find, you know, people that look like you that may be in the business side that can help. And I think there's like obviously like a lot of great communities like the Asian American Collective and obviously the Digilog, which I'll speak on, and that provide these resources.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly where we were getting to with the Digilog, because, you know, you're like helping out, supporting creators, and in your experience, like, what's the biggest challenge that musicians face when you're transitioning from like, oh, I'm an aspiring artist, and then now I have this sustainable, full-fledged career that I can like, you know, make money off of and have like a family with?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges. I think one is being able to just organize everything. Yeah. Right? Because as a creative, it's just like there's no sense of time. It's just like, okay, I'm going to be in the studio for 8 hours, knowing that you have to like do a photo shoot the next day. Yeah. You need to, you know, once you start to like kind of build a revenue business, and that's obviously in multiple ways, either through streaming revenue, through merch, through touring, through brand partnerships, through the licensing of your music, like syncs, or even through like community platforms where like, you know, artists now, they're making money through platforms like Twitch. Like people subscribe to the platform because they're just streaming. Yeah. And then there's more like, this is more very music specific. There's platforms like Even, which where, you know, fans can directly invest to an artist in exchange for like early access to like their music or like exclusive products. So just figure out like what your business looks like. And then once you do that, I think the team aspect is important, right? It starts with like your lawyer, because you need someone just legally to like just get your business right. You know, your contracts, understanding like how you're making and collecting money, whether it's from like the streaming revenue, whether it's from your what they call publishing, like as a writer or producer. So getting that right, if you can afford like a business manager or like a manager, making sure like you know how to allocate your money, because you don't want to just spend it frivolously. Yeah. You know, it's like you got to think about the long term. You know, it's not like you're going to be making money consistently over time. So it's just making sure that you can allocate that accordingly, have money just in the bank, for rainy days, things of that nature.
Let me ask another question, because let's say I'm an up and coming musician, right? And then I step in, like you have one of your events and you're like, hey, I have a talent. People think I'm good at what I do. Help me. What is the first thing you do when they walk in there and like they don't know anything about that side of it? They just say, I noticed go on the stage, I could sing, and then where do I go from there? What do you like analyze, like their personality? Do you see like how their business acumen is, or like just their general like work ethic? How do you like kind of analyze and say, okay, this is how we see what you do, and then apply it to like, okay, this is how we can help you develop into a strong artist?
For sure. Look, when you're in a room, there's all levels of artists. So you can't really like come in and be like, hey, you need X, Y, Z. I think the room is going to be talented, first and foremost. If I was a manager, I think I wouldn't necessarily work with an artist that's just starting out, because like, unless you're generating revenue, it doesn't make sense for me to manage.
Yeah.
I think as an emerging artist, I think you start to kind of have to figure out how do you develop your artist voice, your mission, your sound, and then also just trying to figure out like, how to like find that community, and I think that's going to take time. I think for the artists that think this is just a hobby, then that's okay. You can have a full-time job, put out music, and then there's like the multi-hyphenates that like have the full-time jobs but really pursue this from 6 to 11, and I think that's perfectly normal, because there's always been like a kind of a stigma like, oh, I can't like work and then also be creative. Like, well, how are you going to fund your creative endeavors? It doesn't work like that. Like, you signing a deal doesn't like solve your problem. So I think as an artist, understanding that how serious you want to be, because it is a long pathway, right? And that's the reason why we started Digilog, is to provide resources, a lot of self-serve education, like workshops, conferences, just to empower you, because ultimately we want to empower artists to be what we call artistpreneurs, like being essentially like CEOs of their music business. Because you need to educate yourself. Like, it's not just about being creative. It's just understanding like, how do I like sustain this in the long term? Unless you just want to just be a hobbyist and like, I just want to perform whenever I want, I'm like, that's okay. Just kind of understanding like what pathway you want to like lead to.
I love that you do that. I actually wanted to bring it back and ask you to share with our listeners what Digilog is, just because they might not know about it. So that way they know how they can get involved or find you, or any of that.
So Digilog is a music and tech ecosystem. We've been programming since 2016. When I first started music, there wasn't a place to kind of just like go to for resources that I felt. So I was really inspired back in 2016, where like, how do I not help one artist individually, but help a community as a whole? And we first started with meetups, and it's just like getting people together. And when you're with people that understand your what you love, it's like you can just geek out and just be yourself. So I didn't understand what community was until I started seeing people come every month, and it started getting bigger. And then fast forward, we find ourselves having a community of like 100 plus people at these events, but also figuring out like what resources we can provide them. So first and foremost, like our first vertical is community. Like, how do we bring people together through our events? Making sure you build relationships through these events, because most creatives, they can be introverted, so it's hard to kind of put themselves out there, out of their shell. I think the other vertical is music careers, essentially being like a hub for like jobs and resources. So kind of think like LinkedIn for like music and tech. So we're very specific. So we post jobs every Monday and Thursday, and we also have a recruiting side. So like, companies commission us to like hire within the community. So like, kind of think of it like a recruiting agency on that. And then on the third vertical is artist discovery. So essentially, how do we service like the 95% of artists that are not necessarily the Taylor Swifts, the Drakes of the world, and giving them a space to like either perform, we support them through our playlists, showcases, and artist playback sessions, and just ways for them to kind of collaborate with each other as well. So that's a big one. And then education. I feel like the industry itself is right now going through a massive transformation. So it's just educating artists as to like how they navigate these changes, whether it's the implementation of AI, protection of their copyright when it comes to music, how to like generate revenue in 2025, like what does that look like?
Yeah.
So we just like to Jason's point earlier, we just had our conference, Digital Art Days, back in October. Shout out to the whole team for putting it together and all the sponsors, everyone involved. So just putting those events together so that, you know, there's always educational opportunities for creatives to learn.
That's awesome.
All right. So for everyone listening out there, maybe you are an aspiring artist. You might have, like, especially if you're Filipino too, because I think we see a lot of Filipinos breaking through and doing it.
Yeah.
But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So to every Filipino aspiring artist right there, what advice would you give to them specifically? And what should they focus on specifically to like have their name, you know, shine?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, I'm learning a lot more about the music ecosystem within the Philippines because it's transformed a lot. But I can really speak more so on Filipino artists in the States. I think one, the direct to music, ability to put your music out can happen at any time of the day. So you can distribute your music on YouTube, streaming services. There's like self-serve distributors like CD Baby and DistroKid. So that's easy. That's one. So you don't need money to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of money to do that. It's like, you know, I think you pay like $10 a month, or there's like a yearly fee for DistroKid. So there's one. I think from a production standpoint, you know, if you can't afford a producer, there's like beats that you can license online. And then also, if you're aspiring to be a producer, you could produce, you know, find your friends that produce music with you and understand that, hey, we're coming into this like with a shared interest and a shared vision. You know, we're not necessarily going to like exchange money, but we're going to obviously make sure like our shares for the music are split evenly, you know, making sure like the business is right. There's that. I think creatively, just looking at your circle, like Filipinos are freaking creative. Like
Yeah.
someone's gonna be shooting content, someone's gonna be illustrating something. So find your tribe. Be like, yo, you do this really well, you do this really well, you do this really well. So as you're putting music out, like that's what I start doing. I was like, start leading on your like your whole crew. And then once you start doing that, start kind of focus on your friends and family. Whether it's the holiday parties, whether it's just like, that's why I started nagging. And it's funny because I'm starting this new project now. It's like, I'm literally just hitting people up directly. And it just goes old school. It's like kind of like the newspaper route.
Yeah.
Or, you know, where like you just have to knock on the doorbell.
Yeah.
And I'm just like ring the doorbell and it's like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
And it starts with like the first, you know, 10, the first 25, and the first 50. Like, let's say you have, 500 followers, just for context. Like, you know, focus on the first 50 that really rock with you.
Yeah.
Like, triple down on them. Like, give them incentives of like, hey, here's early access to my music. Here's a private show. Like, make them feel like they're part of your growth.
Yeah.
Because it's not an overnight thing. Like, for example, and we'll talk about this in a second, like this playlist that I started, and I'll talk about it with the Fresh Goods playlist. Like, we hit 50 followers yesterday, and I was like jumping for joy. and people were like, 50 followers. I'm like, you don't understand the small wins and the small benchmarks, regardless of where you're at. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I'm happy that I got 15 followers because it's freaking hard to grow things, you know? And I think you got to appreciate the small wins and be patient, I think, as an artist and a creative.
But I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. So how do you think technology like AI is going to impact like indie artists and their career moving?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. This is my opinions alone. So I think from an AI standpoint, you know, productivity is going to help. Is going to be more efficient. Mm-hmm. I think being able to have, concepts and ideas as songwriters, like you have concepts to start as opposed to just kind of like lulling around in studio, just like
trying to figure it out. Yeah.
It's like it's an idea starter.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I look at it. I think the question is about the integration of AI and the likeness of voices. So for example, let's say you're a great songwriter, but you're like, I want to sound like Ariana Grande. It's like, I think from a licensing standpoint, how does Ariana Grande monetize off the likeness of her voice?
Yeah.
Whether, I think this is what I'm going to see in the future. I'm going to see AI voice kits where I think labels or publishing companies are going to license those AI voice kits. So, and it's like I said, they'll also have to be approved too, to be able to like, be distributed to streaming services, because you don't want people writing foul stuff and using AI voices.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some regulatory stuff. I think the other thing that we're going to see too is probably the differentiation between AI made music and I would say human made music. So there's going to be more, I think they're going to get paid more. This is what I see. It's like there's going to be a distinction on Spotify or like Apple Music, like, oh, this is made by human. And they're like, oh, I'm going to listen to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, as much as people fear AI, the human experience, whether it's live music, because that's going to always transcend.
Yeah.
The human experience is there's no comparison to it.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm saying that is because a lot of people were bullish about a lot of things, and I'm sorry if you've invested in these things, NFTs.
Yeah.
Virtual reality.
Yeah.
Like they were saying they're going to replace certain things, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
We have to go back to the basics.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So let's circle back to Digilog days, because I feel like this is something that I see, and I kind of like, well, when we talked about it, we kind of compared it to like a TED Talk, like a Comic-Con, but a job fair too, like you were saying with the Digilog in the first place. But so how can you explain how you and your team got together and decided like, hey, let's make our own kind of thing and then just have it there for the masses?
For sure. So I just want to preface, like, we had no handbook on how to build a conference. So the first year was like a huge learning curve. I don't recommend anyone is diving in. But I think we had extensive experience producing events. And I think one of the things that we noticed that there was a gap within like the conference space, because let's just be honest, most conferences are hella expensive.
Yeah.
Like,
they are.
They're like from 500 to 1,000
Yep.
more, and they usually outprice creatives, right? So we wanted to create a conference that provided all the resources, whether it's job resources, education, artist resources, but was like, super affordable and accessible. Not only to creatives, but students. Just for context, like our conference this year, and we discounted because of like all the layoffs.
Yeah.
Was $150 for 2 days. That was just general admission, and $75 for a student for 2 days. So
That's great.
The way I look at it is like, we announced the conference 6 months in advance. Like if you're a student, you save $20 a month, over the next 6 months. It's like you have money that you can gear towards the conference. And I always try to explain, like, you can plan for these things in advance, as opposed to like, oh, I gotta shell out like $3 to $5 grand to like to these things.
Yeah.
So I just like want people to understand, like, you can invest, you can look at this as an investment.
Yeah.
Because the ROI is like, I like to say 20, 30x.
Yeah.
Whether it's relationships that you come across, the mentor sessions that you have, like the free headshots that you get, and make the friendships hopefully that you build from it, when people see each other over time. So I really want to give credit to the team, because like I said, building and creating something takes time. It took us about 7 months to do it this year, and it was great because we had so much time to like build it. But talking every day and just like them seeing my annoying texts, they know I was on it, but be able to see people's faces, and especially we were able to like give 100 free tickets to like people that got laid off, and
that's awesome.
to me that was like big, because our industry was going through it.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to be able to do it. At the end of the day, and just so transparently, we're not making money off of it.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, like, we're doing this because the industry needs us the most.
Yeah.
And we have obviously our other businesses to help kind of offset costs. But, at the end of the day, that's, it's an expense, and but we do it because we know that the community needs it the most.
I love that. I was going to ask if you had like a program for students, like if someone wanted to buy a ticket for a student. I've seen that as well. Like other conferences do that as well. So
Yeah, for sure. So we worked with like the Rock Nation School, like NYU, Columbia, just figuring out ways to kind of package, like student packages and so forth. In most cases, like we'll discount it, because like we just want students to like really see the value.
yeah.
And they do, because like this is their first really entry point to music. They're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like didn't know this existed.
Probably sparked so many ideas at your conferences, I can imagine.
For sure, because I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I didn't. It's like I walked into it just like very blindly, but that's the reason why I just don't want people to make the same mistakes. It's like you don't want to go through 3 years. I always tell people like I didn't have my first break until I was 33. I'm 40, so it was like a good 8 years in,
Yeah.
figuring it out.
Yeah, and you give a pathway
Yeah.
for other people to do it. 'Cause I think back in the day, it was just like, let me get that internship. Let me kind of like try to make these relationships happen, and then hopefully it'll pop off. Where there's kind of like a thoughtful like game plan of like, all right, this is maybe how I can go and network and make things happen. I can imagine, like all of us, we've been to plenty networking parties where we ended up getting more drunk than making
Yeah.
it like a business connection,
Right.
where there's opposite. You made a friend and they ended up being one of your closest allies, for what you're doing. So
For sure.
it's here or there, but I think this one is kind of like very focused, and I like that. Especially, there's the word starving artist for a reason. So like you making it affordable is huge,
Yeah.
Not everybody has that opportunity. So, I appreciate that.
So when you see artists from the ground up achieving success, can you explain how you feel in that moment?
Yeah, that was an experience. It's just for context. So I met Money, aka Priscilla Renee, back in 2021 through my business partner J.R. McKee. For context, J.R. McKee and I used to work at Alamo Records. I used to head digital over there, and he used to head DSP relationships or streaming relationships. He was always entrepreneurial, so when he pivoted, he was like, hey, Drew, I want to start this distribution company called Music Power Respect. I want to help a few artists that I'm really excited about and help build their catalog over time. There's this artist named Money Long. She's kind of been in the industry for 10 years. She's wrote from some big artists like Chris Brown, Rihanna, and now she's putting out original music. When I first came across the music, I was like, this is, like, I'm an R&B head. So I'm like, man, this is bringing back R&B to the fullest. And I was super excited. So in summer of 2021, I remember I was like, hey, let's build your audience and fan base, right? So at the time, she only had like 300 followers on TikTok. Started putting music out from her more recent projects. I was like, all right, let's go at this. And incrementally, we advised her like, hey, how do you showcase your personality? How do you showcase, she loved like her nails and her fashion, and she helped build her TikTok over time. And it's important to build a fan base that way. So by the time that Hours and Hours kind of hit like a crazy moment, December of that year, all the things that she did to that point kind of like was the foundation to kind of like catapult this viral moment. So Hours and Hours was a song that kind of went crazy online. And I think during the time it was such a needed song because it's, whether it's your partner or it's whether your family, it's just like, it's such a great record. And that song was streaming so well, and it got her a big record deal with Def Jam eventually. And then kind of fast forward, shout out to the Def Jam team and everyone over there for her like to be in a position to get the Grammy. And I was able to be part of it. So shout out to JR and the team, Jasmine, for being part of that team to help, push that record.
Is this like having a child, like seeing something develop and then just flower, and it's like, wow, but how you feel? Like what are the emotions that go through? You're like, damn, I did this.
Yeah, I like to say I played a small part, and at the end of the day, it's the artist. She put out the art. But I just remember like looking at some tweets like, I'm gonna get a Grammy. you know, and I was like, damn, I'm not one.
That's awesome.
It was really cool, and I think that's why I always go back to the Filipino kid from Queens. I was like, my story is very unique and long, but man, you can do it.
Yeah.
I did it. I've had some dark days where like, man, I just want to quit, but it's cool to see things on the other side. Yeah.
I'm happy for you. That's awesome.
Okay, cultivating artists like Money Long, and then now cultivating artists like in the Philippines. Can you give us a little? You talked about with your Fresh playlist, but can we get into what the Fresh project is all about?
Yeah, so it's great because I haven't talked about it publicly. So this is like a great debut or debut. So
18 Roses, right?
yeah. I think, you know, and we can speak on this. We're all champions for the Filipino community and the diaspora in various ways. And I've always kind of supported the Filipino artist community adjacently through the Digilogue. You know, one of the first artists I came across was Manila Gray back in 2018.
Nice.
And I was really just like, hey, I don't need anything from you guys. I just want to help connect the dots because champions, you know, I want to champion for your music. I was on YouTube. I was like, who are these guys from Vancouver? And how are they making music like this? And it's like, it's very contemporary.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, man, they're cool. I eventually got to meet them. Just cool guys. Now, and people have always asked, like, hey, can you join this or that? You know, I just haven't had time because I just, you know, I think I've never just been in a position. It's like, now that the Digilogue is in a great place where I have great team members that can run it, I was like, okay, this is the time to really like invest in this. Now that I have more resources to offer, I have the relationships to like help share. And the first project is a project that's open-ended, but meaning like it could be anything with regards to music and the Filipino artist voices. But I wanted to start with a playlist, and that playlist is really the spectrum of OPM, from to P-pop to like Filipino rap, R&B, indie, all. And when you go through it, you can really listen to it the way I sequenced it, and you're gonna see pockets of R&B and hip hop, and it's great because it's a mixture of artists from back home speaking Tagalog and English, just
I like that a
Tagalog.
lot, actually.
Yeah,
I
and
do
it's artists
enjoy
from here.
that.
And artists from here. And people was like, how do you, you know, like can you mix both? And I was like, sonically, you don't listen to just the lyrics, just listen to the energy of the music.
Yeah.
And then you can just like listen to it, and then like it just flows. So my first kind of like mission is to build this playlist so I can build relationships, not only with artists from the States, but artists from back home, and understand like the music that they're creating. And I think that's the grassroots approach. The other part too with the Fresh project is like, you know, we launched an IG, which is essentially just going to be very similar to the Digilogue, an artist discovery platform where we want to share music, eventually just to kind of share artist stories, and just we'll leave it there. I think the other thing I'm really excited about is I'm cooking up an event during Grammy Week 2025. I haven't publicly announced it, but I'm going to be curating an artist event highlighting Filipino artists during music's biggest week.
That's great.
And,
That's amazing.
yeah, and I'm really excited about it because I want them to feel like they're being seen in music's biggest week and saying like, hey, like, you know, my music's being shared. So, and I want to align with, you know, the folks that are doing it. But like I said, this is a personal initiative. Like, I just wanted to just do it. People are like, Drew, why are you texting me this playlist? Like, I was like, I'm ringing the doorbell. You know, just like hitting up. I'm going old school.
Yeah.
Like, just like, you know, I'm not taking, you know, I understand the audience I've built with the community, but I'm going old school. Grammy Week starts on the 27th of January. So, and yeah, I think also educating the Filipino artists on the Recording Academy. So I'm a chapter advisor here in New York.
Yeah.
There's really some great allies in the Filipino space. Shout out to Jamie Dominguez. She's over at the MLC. And just letting them know, like, hey, there's like these things that you can learn, and it'll be great. I think it'll be really cool one day that a Filipino artist, gets a Grammy.
Yeah.
I'm sure there have been, but like, so an artist that I'm like, I'm aware, privy of.
Yeah,
privy
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So,
I agree.
Is there any one of the artists that you featured that you're allowed to talk about?
yeah, 100%. There's a handful. I think there's this artist, Jeter. He's dope. More like kind of a mixture of R&B, hop. I like Jessica Domingo. She's from LA. Incredible voice. There's obviously very more popular artists like Dionella. That's super dope. And I think for me, like, I'm excited to learn about the music scene in the Philippines, and humbly just going there and just building relationships with, obviously the reps there on the business side, and the artist community, and obviously like the diaspora here. I'm a student, like I know what I know, and I can advise on what I know from the States, but the music ecosystem, not only in the Philippines but in Southeast Asia, is growing, and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I just spoke to someone yesterday who has a very like deep understanding of like the music scene in Vietnam, and what he told me is like a lot of the music communities are kind of like working together within Southeast Asia, kind of like a multinational thing, to kind of support each other and support the music economies, because it's not like a standalone thing where it's like, oh, we're doing music from the Philippines or music from Vietnam or from Thailand. It's like, that's like a drive away, and in some cases with Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, or like a flight away to the Philippines.
Yeah.
So it's just figuring out how to support each other that way, and that's like more from a macro level. But I think just the small stuff I could at least do is start to build relationships.
So they're all coming together and working together. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he was telling me like
That's
kind
amazing.
of like a
That's
a
dope.
way to support, because when you think
love
about music
that.
from Asia, you think K-pop, but that's just not representative of.
That's just one piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one piece. That's what people know.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why most recently I was like, I'm being very bullish about the music that's from the Philippines and the diaspora, just because we not only speak Tagalog, but we speak English.
Yeah.
As like,
And they're damn good too.
yeah. Yeah. So I'm really excited about, the next 5 to 10 years.
That's awesome. So your work focuses heavily on paying it forward. What's a moment in your life when someone paid it forward to you, and how did it impact you?
Yeah. There's a few moments. I think I just remember when I first started Blank Label back in 2010, that artist management company, and I was looking for a full-time gig. One of my friends, whose wife was working at the time at Beats, was like, hey, there's this guy that's looking for like a part-time gig, because just for context, Beats by Dre was like the hottest headphone at the time.
Yeah.
And they had like a pop-up shop, and I was like, hey, I'll do it. It was like, it's just a certain salary, but I was like, I'm going to do it because I like the fact that I can attach my name to the brand. And I learned a lot from that experience, from like how brands leverage, their products to like integrate to like music and sports. And that's where I learned a lot about brand partnerships and that whole Beats by Dre experience. The other part too, I met my former manager at South by Southwest, and he had hired me on the spot to consult at Def Jam. So shout out to JD Tominski. He was like, yeah, we're looking for someone. I was like, how about you? I was like, me? I was like, okay, well, because I used to always like experience imposter syndrome, where like, man, I don't know if, am I, because I'm Indian, like, am I ready for the majors? And once I got in, and it took me like 3 months to realize, oh yeah, I'm made for this. So yeah, shout out to JD for giving me a chance and giving me the confidence.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so outside of the work, what's your favorite way to recharge, and how does that help fuel your creativity?
I'm big on self-care. As a person that obviously was a big proponent of like hustle culture, I I get a massage once a month.
That's great.
I have to just like relax.
Yeah.
Other part too is really reinvesting in my health. I think for the past 10 years, I've ignored it in the sense that like I was just like working and not necessarily prioritizing. So that's a big part of that. Whether it be like waking up in the morning, stretching, and just doing cardio, just like those are things that help me just kind of just like feel good. Because I'm an entrepreneur, so like whatever I'm doing or feeling is going to be the output of what I'm putting out.
Yeah.
Other part too is just like obviously praying and just a sense of gratitude, just being able to like spend time with family because they humble me.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't care what you're doing. you're like take care of the baby. Oh, shout out to my niece. She's a year old.
Aww.
It's like they don't. That's what I love. Is like they don't care. They're just like they see me older brother or
Yeah.
that kid from Queens. So yeah. So I think family time is important, and I think one of the other things I enjoy is just kind of catching up with all the homies. Like life gets busy, but like just having like a quick catch up, like cool, like whether it be coffee, food, and just like a call, and I think those things like kind of remind you like, hey, there's still people in my corner.
Yeah.
So you might not talk to them every day, but they're thinking about you.
Yeah. For sure. So last question, as a future ancestor, what do you see your legacy as?
That's a great question. Future ancestor. Woo!
No pressure. No pressure at all. Just a little.
Yeah. I hope I could just be like, hey, Drew was able to create a space for me to either start my journey in music. He was a person that listened, regardless of like where I was at my stage of my career, and just be a beacon just for light and support. Even outside of music, I think there's just so much like negativity in the world. I feel like this is like my way of contributing to positivity.
I love that.
And we all have different ways of doing that. And I think this podcast to be able to share and highlight people like this is like a great way as well. So it's like figuring out how to like do that in your own way. And I think, that's really the goal. I think over time. And I think the other part too, and from a legacy standpoint, is just being able to empower like leaders and people that I've mentored and be in a position that they can kind of like do the same thing in the future. Because like that's how you build tradition and legacy, being able to teach. And I think just being a teacher.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. Yeah, thank you. That's a great convo.
You're off the hot seat.
So
Well, not yet.
Oh.
this is our portion of the episode where we play a couple of games. So, yes, we're going to start with our rapid fire. So, first thing that comes to mind, I'm going to let my co-host, Kat, start it off.
Oh.
So who's a guest that you'd like to see on Future Ancestors?
I think we talked about her. Like, wait, have you guys had John?
No.
John Vincent?
No, we know him, but no, we haven't had him on.
John Vincent, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
John
Okay.
Vincent.
Awesome.
All right,
I Emily too. Well, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's coming on though.
Yeah, exactly.
Evelyn, you're coming on.
Yeah, Emily. John Vincent for sure. Just he's someone I admire a lot, and he's doing a lot great in the music space.
Love that.
So
Okay.
yeah, he works closely with Denise, who's a dope artist from the Philippines.
Okay.
Big up, John. What up? Okay, favorite song on your Fresh Goods playlist?
Oh, could have been you, Jessica Domingo.
Okay. A song that always gets you hyped.
Oh, that's a good one. Let me see. I'm trying to think. Gets me hype. I'm R&B.
You know what? I noticed that on your playlist. I was like,
yeah.
yo,
I loved it.
you know
I was
what?
like,
He's
this
so
is great.
Filipino. This is like, a Filipino thing, like a kilig thing, like, you know, like that's the word for like love, like the butterflies. He got that in like I think more dudes, us guys, we're like all up about that R&B thing. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but
Yeah.
so yeah, you can go with an R&B joint if
Yeah, no, for sure.
it doesn't have to be Mama Said Knock You Out. Like you got to get like all like motivated, like
For sure. I'm just trying to think. I think there's obviously a plethora of artists that that I've always just kind of admired. Just trying to think. I think I think with money, like whenever time I listen to Hours and Hours record,
I do love that song.
yeah, it's for me it's nostalgic. So I don't listen to it every day. I was like, damn, that was a great time.
Okay.
Yeah,
you attach it to a memory. I feel
yeah,
I like that.
That was a great time.
Okay. Favorite musician of all time?
I would say group. So Boyz II Men.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, Boyz II Men. I would rank them because that's like I remember my mom playing that Boyz II Men tape for like 24 hours driving to Florida.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, why? Am
oh
I
no! All the Filipinos love that because it's the Beatles cover, so that's
Yeah.
why. We don't want to talk anymore.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah, and I was
I used to
like
hear that song.
10, and I was like, what is this? It's like nonstop.
That is so funny. Name a hobby that people might not know that you have.
Okay. So I wasn't much of a gamer back, but like during the pandemic, I invested in the PS4, not PS5, but I got into playing FIFA. So I play FIFA every day.
Okay.
Yeah, I play it every day.
Wow.
So for a good 30 minutes, because it allows me just to like
Decompress. Yeah.
Everyone has their thing.
Yeah.
And I now, and just for context, like I'm a big soccer fan now. So shout out to Liverpool FC. That's my team, and the Knicks.
Okay.
I used to be addicted to FIFA, so I'm not gonna get into that. But yeah, I get why. It's addictive. Okay.
Yeah, it's great because like soccer gives me like an outlet outside
Yeah.
of music. It's like
You
I
need
can talk
that.
to
You
me.
have to have balance. Yeah.
Soccer and basketball
For sure.
Okay.
Okay. If you had to pull a name drop on who you worked with, who would it be?
Oof. Okay. Like artist wise, let me see. Pusha T. So I worked on it as I worked on a Daytona project. That was back in 2018. Tiana Taylor. I think one of my favorite projects was probably, or artist I got to develop was Rod Wave. Yeah, and that was
Okay.
yeah. He's like underground, but like if you know, you know. But he's also big.
Yeah,
Like,
it's in that middle. Like,
Yeah. It's like
Yep, that one single away from
exactly.
blowing up.
Exactly.
I feel you.
Yeah, but he's massive though. Like when you think about like massive hip hop artists, he is like my one of my favorite projects. I got to work Danny Lay. She was like one of my first like songs to like break,
Okay.
and like it was probably my first like big like record. So Easy featuring Chris Brown. That was like the record that went kind of crazy.
Okay.
That was like my first like big project. So
Very
See,
nice.
we try to get our Filipino guests here to humble brag because we know we're always like
Yeah.
on the humble, but sometimes you gotta put it out there because we want to acknowledge your good work. Okay,
Yes.
So
Thank you.
just letting
Yes,
you know.
Yeah.
exactly. What is your go-to quote to keep you motivated?
oh yeah, that's a good one. I think you got to be your biggest champion. I think oftentimes we look for validation and we look for confirmation. And I think I got to be my biggest hype person.
I love
And I
that.
think that's, sometimes I look in the mirror, I'm just like, this day sucks, but tomorrow's going to be better. Yeah. And it's okay with that because there's always times where there's things you can't control. Like whether,
Sure.
there's things that you can't control. And I control your response to things. And I think that's important.
So
All right. That's our rapid fire. So we got one more.
Whoa.
Okay.
One
And it's
more.
called
One more
this or
game.
that.
yes. So
Just got to pick one or the other.
you could go first.
Okay. All right. First one: studio sessions with the group or only with the necessary people. So group would be like entourage and all that, or just essential personnel.
Such a personnel. It's about energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't need people loitering around and taking pictures. Like, it's a vibe. Put the candle. Let's get the music. Start writing. Just for context, I've been managing a songwriter for a good 9 years. So like, his name is Marcus Mims. Shout out to him. And once you enter a room, you already know if you're gonna make a good record or not. The first 5 minutes, the people,
The energy.
yeah. If you're there to work or you're there just to say that you're in the studio, two different things.
Yeah. So winning a Grammy or launching the next big indie artist?
Launching the next big indie artist.
Okay.
Yeah, because we'll get another Grammy.
There you go.
True. Okay, album cover art or album cover photography?
Album art.
And
Album
then-
art, yep.
And late night studio sessions or early morning brainstorm meetings?
Cool. Now it's early brainstorming. I gotta go bed. 12.
Oh, we're grown. We know.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Okay, last one. If you went home to the Philippines, are you going to the mountains or are you going to the beach?
Oh,
And the mountains could be like,
Yeah.
like the province,
I want to say both because I want to go Serrano. I want to go Palawan. Yeah, I want to go just experience the food. There's like a really good platform called Feeder. So it's kind of like, the Anthony Bourdain of the Philippines and a channel. And I just got inspired just looking at all the food and the history of it. But I also want to go to the mountains as well and experience, food in the provinces as well. So I'm excited. I think, excited to go back home.
Do you have any plans to go back home?
Definitely next year.
Nice.
Yeah. Obviously I want to go, plant my roots in Manila. But yeah, just meet as many creatives, whether it be in Baguio or, like in the islands as well. Just like, more of the beaches. And there's like so many different artists from all parts of the Philippines.
Yeah.
When I'm just like doing my research, it's super cool.
Yeah, there's a lot.
awesome.
That's awesome. Well, that's it.
All right. Thank
Wow,
you very
I'm
much.
officially out of the hot seat.
Yes.
You guys, to be honest, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kat. You guys asked some really great questions, really well prepared. And then, yeah, I'm excited for the platform to grow.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you. And
Thank
also,
you for
wait,
having me.
let everyone know where they can find you, follow you, all of that.
Yeah, for sure. So one, follow the Digilog, THEDIGILOGUE. That's the community platform. The Fresh Project, THEPHRESH Project, PROGECT. And then my handle, Drew Curator, DREUCURATOR. Drew Curator. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been the Future Ancestors Podcast.
Appreciate it.
Next time.
Thanks, guys.